In the heart of Africa, there was a village called Zuberi, where nature and spirit lived in harmony. Nasha, a kind-hearted 13-year-old girl, lived there with her father, Chief Jandari, after the passing of her mother, a powerful priestess. Their bond was unbreakable, and together they brought warmth and love to the village. Zuberi was a place of peace, filled with laughter, traditions, and close-knit community, until a shadow began to loom, threatening to break their happiness apart. One fateful day, the peaceful rhythm of Zuberi was interrupted by the arrival of Worena, a striking woman with charm that seemed to light up the whole village. She came with a story. She was the woman who had captured Chief Jandari's heart after the tragic loss of his wife. Her beauty and grace were undeniable, and before long, she had the village entranced. She spoke of love and unity, and soon the villagers, captivated by her smile and smooth words, welcomed her with open arms. It didn't take long for Worena to marry Chief Jandari, solidifying her place in the heart of the village and the chief's life. But beneath her sweet exterior, a dangerous shadow lurked. From the moment Worena set foot in Zuberi, she looked at Nasha with cold, calculating eyes. While everyone else saw her as the perfect new bride, Nasha immediately sensed that something was wrong. Worena's smile, though beautiful, didn't reach her eyes when she looked at Nasha. She would often give a forced compliment, like calling Nasha sweet with a tone that made the words feel empty, or laugh a little too loudly when Nasha made a mistake, as though mocking her. As the days went by, Nasha couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Worena's kindness seemed shallow, especially when it was directed toward her. Worena would often pretend to show concern for Nasha, but the words felt like daggers wrapped in velvet. She'd tell her, "Oh, you've grown so much. Let's hope it's not too much for your father to handle," followed by a thin, fake smile. At other times, she would give Nasha backhanded compliments about her appearance or chores, always finding ways to subtly undermine her. The villagers, blind to the hidden bitterness in Worena's heart, believed her to be an angel sent to bring the chief comfort. Chief Jandari, still deeply grieving his late wife, saw in Worena a woman who could help him heal. He didn't notice the way Worena's gaze hardened whenever Nasha was around, or how she would subtly discourage the village's affection for his daughter. But Nasha noticed everything. She could feel Worena's eyes on her when she wasn't looking, could sense the coldness in her tone, and knew deep down that the woman who had entered their lives wasn't the loving stepmother she pretended to be. Worena, though seemingly perfect to everyone else, was slowly beginning to resent the one person who stood in the way of her control over the chief. The innocent girl she saw as a threat. The jealousy simmered beneath the surface, growing stronger with each passing day. She wanted to be the one to claim the chief's love, to be the center of his world, and Nasha's place in that world was a constant reminder that she would never fully have him. Her jealousy, hidden behind her polished words and deceptive smiles, was the first crack in the facade of happiness that had once defined their home. The storm was building, and Nasha could feel it in every whispered insult and every insincere gesture that came from her new stepmother. As the days passed, Worena's mask of kindness slowly began to slip, but only when no one else was watching. When others were around, she laughed sweetly and acted like the perfect wife, but in private, she began showing her true face. Nasha started to feel like a stranger in her own home. Worena began finding ways to make her feel small, unimportant, and unwanted. She would enter Nasha's room when she was away, taking her favorite clothes and quietly tossing them into the fire, pretending they had gone missing. When Nasha asked about them, Worena would act surprised and blame her for being careless. Things grew worse when small things in the house began to disappear. Bracelets, spoons, even a pouch of dried herbs. Worena was quick to point the finger. "Maybe someone in this house isn't as innocent as she looks," she'd say, loud enough for others to hear, all while glancing at Nasha. When the villagers heard whispers that Chief Jandari's daughter was stealing, they were confused. Nasha, the kind girl they had always known, suddenly became someone they looked at with doubt in their eyes. Worena also worked to cut Nasha off from the friends she once laughed and played with. She told lies, hinted at things that weren't true, and warned other mothers to keep their children away. Soon, Nasha found herself sitting alone during celebrations. Her old friends, now too afraid to be seen near her. Children who used to run to her with stories now turned away, as if she carried something bad with her. And still, Nasha said nothing. She kept the pain locked inside, never once complaining to her father. She believed that if she stayed quiet, things might return to the way they were. She didn't want to ruin the little peace her father had found again, after losing her mother. She watched him laugh with Worena, thinking he was finally healing. Nasha loved him too much to risk taking that away. So, she smiled when it hurt, stayed silent when accused, and cried only when no one could hear. But Chief Jandari wasn't blind to everything. He began to notice the change in his daughter. Her eyes no longer sparkled. She no longer danced around the house or sang while helping with the chores. She became quiet, moving with her head down, her voice softer than before. At first, he blamed the passing of time, maybe even growing pains. But deep inside, a part of him felt something wasn't right. Worena, ever so clever, always had the perfect excuse. She's just tired. Maybe she misses her mother, she'd say, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her voice, so calm and sweet, made him feel foolish for even thinking otherwise. She would cook for him, bring him tea, and speak with such grace that he forgot his worries for a while. The truth was, her kindness was a weapon, and she used it to blind him, to make him doubt the very signs in front of his eyes. While Nasha suffered in silence, Worena grew bolder. She believed the girl was weak, that she could break her spirit slowly without anyone knowing. But what Worena didn't understand was that Nasha's silence wasn't weakness. It was love. Love for a father she refused to hurt. And though no one could see it yet, that quiet strength was slowly growing, waiting for the right moment to rise. The sky turned grey as thick clouds gathered over Zuberi, casting a strange stillness across the village. Birds flew low, trees began to sway, and the elders, wise and deeply in tune with nature, warned everyone to stay inside. A powerful storm was coming, they said, the kind that bends trees and sends animals running for cover. People listened, locking their doors, bringing their children close, and lighting candles to keep the darkness away. But within one home, a different kind of danger was brewing, a plan born not from nature, but from a heart poisoned with envy. Worena stood near the doorway, watching the sky darken. Her eyes gleamed, not with fear, but with anticipation. She turned to Nasha with a sudden sweetness that felt unfamiliar. "Come," she said, holding a woven basket. "There is something special I want to show you." Nasha hesitated. The winds were picking up, the air smelled of rain, and the warnings of the elders still echoed in her ears. But Worena's voice was gentle, her face calm. "Just a short walk," she promised, "for a fruit that only grows during storms, a mango that your mother used to love." Curious and longing for a connection to the mother she barely remembered, Nasha agreed. She followed Worena through the empty village streets, past the dancing trees and whispering bushes, toward the cliffs beyond the far fields. The wind howled louder with each step, and thunder rolled like drums in the distance. Still, Worena pressed forward, her pace fast and sharp. Nasha struggled to keep up, shielding her eyes from dust and debris. She didn't notice how tightly Worena gripped the basket, or how her eyes kept shifting toward the edge of the cliff. When they reached the top, Worena pointed ahead. "There," she said, shouting over the roar of the wind. "Just past that ledge, you'll see the tree." Nasha took careful steps, her feet unsure on the wet ground. Lightning lit the sky for a brief second, revealing the steep drop below. Then, everything happened too fast. As Nasha reached out to steady herself, Worena moved behind her. Without warning, she shoved her hard, so hard that Nasha lost her footing and fell. The scream was swallowed by the storm. The wind roared louder, as if hiding the crime. Worena stood at the edge, breathing heavily, staring into the darkness below. The basket rolled from her hand and tumbled after Nasha, vanishing into the shadows. Rain began to fall, cold and angry. She whispered to herself, "It's over. No one will ever know." Her secret, she believed, had gone with the wind. Worena turned and walked back, soaked and shivering, but not from cold, from the weight of what she had done. The storm raged on behind her, wild and relentless, like the truth refusing to be buried. As thunder cracked across the sky, the village remained unaware of the terrible act that had just unfolded beyond the cliffs, where the storm had hidden a cry and darkness had hidden a fall. Nasha's body hit the ground far below with a thud. her small frame lying still among the rocks and twisted branches. Rain poured over her, the storm crashing above like an angry drumbeat, yet she didn't feel the cold or the pain. Everything faded into silence. Then slowly, a warm light surrounded her, lifting her away from the brokenness. She opened her eyes and found herself standing in a place that shimmered like moonlight dancing on water. It wasn't the world she knew. The air was calm, the sky a swirl of glowing colors, and the ground beneath her feet felt alive with power. She was in a realm she had only heard about in whispers, from village elders and her father's stories, the spirit world. Before she could move or speak, a presence approached. Massive, regal, and glowing with golden energy, a lion stepped forward. His eyes were deep and wise, his mane swaying like flames. His name was Dogo, guardian of her ancestors and protector of her bloodline. He said nothing at first, simply watched her with a gaze that felt both heavy and comforting. When he finally spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You are not meant to end here, Nasha. Your story is not finished." Before she could ask what he meant, another form appeared from the glowing mist. A woman, beautiful, calm, and filled with light. Nyasha's breath caught. It was her mother, not as she remembered from faded memories, but even more radiant, glowing with the strength of the spirit realm. Her eyes held love, pride, and sorrow all at once. She reached out and gently placed her hand on Nyasha's cheek. "My daughter," she whispered, "you have been touched by the old magic. You carry within you the strength of those who came before, the gift of healing, of truth, of light." Nyasha's eyes widened as her mother spoke. The strange dreams she used to have, the way the wind would sometimes listen to her voice, the sense of knowing things before they happened. It all began to make sense. She was never ordinary. She had power buried deep inside, passed down through the blood of her ancestors. That was why Worena had feared her. That was why she had tried to silence her, but the spirits would not allow it. The earth, the sky, and the ancient protectors had stepped in. Dogo nodded solemnly beside her. "You were chosen long ago. Your path is filled with trials, but your spirit is strong." Nyasha's mother took her hand and placed a carved pendant into her palm. "This will guide you back," she said softly. "Remember who you are. Remember the light inside you." As the light around her began to shift and the spirit realm slowly faded, Nyasha felt strength flow into her. Her body, once broken, was no longer weak. She understood now. She had been protected by forces greater than anyone could see. She had survived not by luck, but by destiny. And with that truth, she began her return, not as a scared girl, but as someone awakened, someone chosen, ready to face what lay ahead. Under the soft glow of dawn, she stirred beneath a shelter of vines and leaves, strength slowly returning to limbs once broken. The pendant on her chest shimmered gently, its warmth a constant reminder of a promise made beyond the veil. Beside her, the golden guardian moved with silent grace, a living shadow of ancient wisdom. The world around them was wild, alive with mystery, yet not unfamiliar. Every leaf held a whisper, every breeze carried a message. Guided step by step, her journey through this sacred land began not just with survival, but awakening. The forest became her teacher. Lessons came from struggle, building shelter, finding food, reading signs in clouds and soil. Every ache brought endurance. Each scar carried a lesson. Nights were not quiet, but full of voices from beyond. Ancestors emerged through the flames, cloaked in light, sharing the wisdom of those who had walked the path before her. They told of a broken balance, of a village led astray, of a truth buried beneath lies. She was not just born into this world. She had been shaped by its spirit. Power stirred deep within. At first, it was a flicker, a spark when she closed her eyes. Then slowly, it grew, hands glowing with healing warmth, whispers calming beasts, thoughts bending nature's will. No longer a frightened girl hiding tears, she became a soul of purpose, with eyes that saw beyond what others missed. Her silence became strength, her stillness, power. The guardian, never far, watched her transform. There were no words of praise, just nods of approval when lessons were passed. Trust replaced doubt, light replaced fear. And through each trial, she remembered what had been done to her, not to hold on to pain, but to give it meaning. The betrayal was never just hers. The harm had spread into the roots of her home. What was once personal now felt greater, a calling to heal what had been twisted. When the time came, the mountain welcomed her to its peak. Wind brushed against her cheeks, no longer biting, but greeting. The guardian's voice rumbled like distant thunder, declaring the moment had arrived. The one who stood on that ridge was no longer a child broken by cruelty, but a warrior forged by truth. Below, her village waited, unaware of the storm about to return, not from the sky, but from the fire she carried inside. The light in her hands was no longer uncertain. The voice in her chest no longer trembled. She carried the spirit of generations. Her heart beat with purpose. With a final breath, she stepped forward. The earth beneath welcomed her return. The winds sang through the trees. Destiny, once interrupted, had found its rhythm again, and she, no longer lost, was ready to reveal it all. The skies over Zuberi had cleared, but a strange heaviness lingered in the air. People whispered in low voices, glancing toward the chief's home where sorrow had taken root. Worena stood before the villagers with tears sliding down her cheeks, her hands trembling as she spoke. She claimed there had been a fight, said harsh words were exchanged, and that the girl had run out into the storm in anger. Her voice cracked at just the right moments. Her sobs seemed genuine. The villagers, unaware of the truth, believed her story. They pitied her, embraced her, and called her strong for enduring such a loss. Chief Jandari was not the same man. The color had left his face, and the fire in his eyes had dimmed. He walked slowly through the village, shoulders bent, as if carrying an invisible weight too heavy to speak of. Every corner of the house reminded him of laughter that was now gone. He would sit alone for hours, staring at the necklace left behind, the chair that no longer rocked, the silence that used to be filled with soft songs. His heart refused to believe what he had been told, but the storm had taken many things before. He forced himself to accept it. Still, strange things began to happen. In the middle of the night, he would wake with a start, hearing her voice, soft, distant, but clear, calling his name. It wasn't like a memory. It felt alive, like a message carried on the wind. At first, he thought it was grief playing tricks on his mind, but it continued. Every dream brought the same sound, the same feeling, as if she were reaching out from somewhere unseen, trying to be heard. Worena noticed the change in him. She began to fear the cracks forming in her story. The chief, once fully under her charm, had started to question. He would sit quietly after meals, lost in thought. He no longer held her hand or smiled as he once did. His eyes, though tired, were searching. He began asking gentle questions. Had anyone seen anything else? Could there have been a mistake? These moments made her nervous. She tried harder, cooked his favorite meals, lit incense to calm his dreams, wept louder when others were near. But the village began to sense it too. Children spoke of hearing laughter near the forest. Elders had visions during prayer, images of light, of something returning. Nothing was clear, but a feeling spread like a breeze before a storm. Something wasn't right. Whispers grew into quiet doubt. Eyes that once looked at Worena with sympathy now lingered a little longer, searching for something hidden. The perfect story she had woven was beginning to unravel, and though she smiled, though she acted with grace and sorrow, her hands would tremble when no one watched, because deep in her bones, she felt it. The truth she had buried was not gone. It was moving, breathing, coming back. The sun rose high over Zuberi as drums echoed through the village. It was the time of the rain dance festival, when the people celebrated the spirits who brought water and life to the land. Children wore beads, elders sang, and the air was filled with the smell of roasted yams and herbs. For a moment, joy returned to the village. Even Chief Jandari managed a weak smile, though his eyes still searched the crowd for a face he missed every day. Worena stood near him, draped in bright cloth, laughing with the villagers, pretending the weight of her lie wasn't growing heavier by the hour. Then the winds shifted. What began as a soft breeze quickly turned into heavy gusts, spinning dust into the air. The skies darkened. People looked up, confused. Storms never came during the rain dance. Drums slowed, voices lowered, and the crowd turned toward the forest. Thunder cracked across the sky. From the shadows of the trees, a figure stepped forward, slow and calm, as if the storm itself followed her. Eyes widened, mouths dropped open. No one spoke. She moved through the crowd, her feet steady, her presence unlike anything they had seen before. Her clothes were woven with pieces of nature, her hair crowned with feathers, and beads that glowed faintly in the dim light. And beside her walked a golden lion, majestic, powerful, eyes locked forward. The children gasped. Elders fell silent. It wasn't just her return, it was how she returned. Some dropped to their knees. Others whispered names from old tales. "Storm daughter," one elder muttered, voice trembling. Another recalled the legend of the girl who would return wrapped in thunder to reveal the hidden truth. Worena stood frozen, her face turned pale, hands clenched. Every whisper, every breath cracked her mask of calm. Chief Jandari stared, eyes wide. His heart stopped, then raced. For a second, he couldn't move, but when their eyes met, something deep inside him broke free. She was real, alive, not a dream, not a shadow. His feet moved before his mind could catch up. The crowd parted as he rushed forward. When he reached her, he didn't speak. He simply held her, as if afraid she would vanish again. But she stood firm, her eyes not on him, yet, but scanning the crowd, as if seeing things others could not. The storm behind her calmed, the wind stopped, and still, silence hung in the air. Because though her return brought joy, it also brought questions. How had she survived? What had she seen? Why did the lion walk with her? And most of all, what truth was she carrying back into Zuberi? The people didn't know it yet, but their world was about to shift. The girl who had left as a shadow had returned as a storm, and nothing, from that moment on, would stay the same. The village stood in silence, eyes locked on the girl who had returned with stormlight in her presence. She didn't waste time. Her voice, calm but strong, rose above the murmurs and beating hearts. She spoke not with anger, but with truth. Every word carried weight. She turned to her father and told him everything, how she was led to the cliff, how Worena smiled while pretending to care, how hands meant to guide her had instead tried to end her. Gasps spread through the crowd. The earth felt still. The chief's face tightened, his breath caught in his chest. He looked toward the woman he once believed brought healing to his home. But now, under the gaze of the people and the roar of thunder still fading, she seemed small. She tried to speak, to laugh it off, to say the girl was confused, lost, perhaps sick from the storm. But the villagers weren't fooled. The air had changed. Dogo, silent until then, took one slow step forward. His growl was low, deep, vibrating through the ground. It wasn't loud, but it shook Worena to her core. Panic filled her eyes. She stumbled back, her hands up. She screamed, not from pain, but from fear. The mask cracked. She cried out that it was the girl's blood, that something inside her wasn't natural. She said she'd seen it in her dreams, fire in her hands, whispers in the dark. She confessed because she could no longer hold the weight of the lie. She had tried to remove what she didn't understand, what she feared. Her words came fast, wild, desperate. The elders stepped forward. Their faces were hard with disbelief. They demanded a full council. This was not just a family matter. This was betrayal of sacred trust. They asked for the truth to be known by all. The villagers gathered closer. Some wept. Others shook their heads, shocked that someone who had smiled so kindly could hide such poison in her heart. Chief Jandari stood still, caught between pain and clarity. His eyes, once clouded with love, now saw every sign he had ignored. The fake tears, the whispers, the shift in his daughter's smile. He felt guilt swell inside him, but also pride. The one he had almost lost stood tall, not just as a survivor, but as a light to the entire village. Worena was taken away under the watch of the elders. Her screams faded as she was led out of the circle of truth. The people turned to the girl again. She didn't smile. She simply lowered her head for a moment and breathed. The lies had broken. The truth had found its place. And in the heart of Zuberi, justice began to bloom where silence once grew. A hush fell over the gathering as the elders pronounced Worena banished, her deceit too great to allow her to remain among those she betrayed. She was led away beneath the watchful eyes of the council, each step carrying the weight of her wrongs. Relief rippled through the villagers as they felt the balance restored. At that moment, the elders turned to the girl who had endured so much and laid their hands upon her head in blessing. Soft chants filled the air, ancient words weaving a protective shield around her, marking her as the guardian of their home. Pride and awe shone in every face as she stood tall, no longer just the chief's child, but Zuberi's chosen defender. Her father, once blinded by sorrow and hope, now knelt before her, tears in his eyes. With a voice thick with remorse, he asked forgiveness, admitting he should have seen her strength long ago. She reached down, lifting him gently to his feet, and in that embrace they healed together, their bond renewed and strengthened. As the villagers cheered, she stepped forward toward the edge of the village, where the land met open plains. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold, and beside her padded the great lion, a silent sentinel to her power. Wind caught her braids, lifting them like banners of triumph as she gazed out over the world she had saved. No longer just a daughter wronged, she had become the Storm Daughter, her legacy born from betrayal, now destined to protect and inspire all of Zuberi.